You're watching This Space. My name is Jake with WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. And today we're talking to Jesus. That's General Strike U.S. We're talking to volunteers James and Day. Folks, how are you doing on this fine, unspecified evening?
Doing great.
Can you tell me what is General Strike U.S.?
General Strike U.S. is a organization that's pretty much all in the name. It's General Strike organizing here in the United States to bring about radical change.
What is a general strike as opposed to a strike in a single industry?
So just giving a quick overview, General Strike forming in 2022, shortly after Roe versus Wade was overturned. General Strike U.S. is not a foreign idea. We've heard General Strike before. The difference is we are organizing towards a revolutionary strike and not just a reactionary strike. So the difference between a revolutionary strike and reactionary strike, unlike just setting a strike date, and just going out there, the General Strike U.S. What we're doing is we are organizing to obtain 3.5%, the critical mass of the people engaged in sustained participation. That participation, due to each one's capacity, their ability, will look different for each one of us. But overall, we are organizing to withhold our labor, our purchasing power, and consent to their organized crime, and basically shift, redirect that energy back into our communities, to each other, to the planet for long-term purposes to create dual power and such. So that's what sets us apart from just your typical reactionary labor strike to more of a revolutionary strike for the people by the people.
What is a general strike, though? Does that mean people from different industries participating in the same request, I guess, from the government?
Yeah. The idea here is, I think, to simplify it and bring this down, most people know what a regular strike is. That's where a union organizes to get a better contract, right? That's with a singular company, usually speaking. There's exceptions to that, but the general idea is the UAW strikes, gets a better deal with Ford Motor Company. Most people are aware that's happening. With a general strike, it's multiple people across multiple industries. Honestly, anyone's able to join in and help the general strike. It's a movement of the working class as a whole. And the idea is not to strike against an individual company, but to strike against the system and win a new social contract for all of us to give us a better world to live in.
When you say to strike against the system,
Mhm.
what's the end goal then? Because there's a whole big system there.
To create the alternative structures within a dying shell. So we understand capitalism, and many of our members understand it to be a backward system, profit over people. So while we are gaining up our numbers and building these alternatives, we're putting people over profit. So these alternative structures come in many different forms, such as mutual aid. It may come in revolutionary time banks. It may come in a people-led childcare service. Every sector of the struggle, we should be building up alternative structures to replace the old.
A big factor in how this is all working is that we're a decentralized organization. We have a central organization, the national group of General Strike U.S., and we're divided out into multiple chapters. So there's there is a centralized, you know, voice in that we're working to connect everyone. But the idea isn't that it's going to be a council room of people within our organization that are the ones that dictate when the general strike happens and when it doesn't happen. We are organizing tools and infrastructure to make sure that the general strike can happen and that we can maintain the general strike until we meet the demands, or at least as many of them as possible, and achieve as much radical change as possible. So to a
Hmm.
degree, what you're kind of saying, like in these nebulous terms of like, is it a set specific thing or is it going to be this more generic term? We have in our welcome packet we actually have a described plan, and that plan actually involves us reaching a certain number of signees before the exact demands are explicitly coded down in what they will be. We know that we're going to be fighting for criminal justice. You know, we're going to be fighting for LGBTQ rights. We know we're going to be fighting for climate change action, but we also want to make sure that we get specialized and educated voices on those topics, as well as having the people who are striking have a voice on those topics. And that's so that structure is being evolved as we grow. So that way we can take on the voices of those that join us and make sure that they are heard.
Day earlier, you said 3.5% was the goal that the network in general is striving for. Uh, three just to be clear, that's 3.5% of American labor that you're looking to capture here.
Of the population and whole. So this movement is essentially for students, for the unhoused, incarcerated, for retired communities, for workers, so on and so forth. So 3.5% of the population. Essentially, we all have a role to play because our problems do go deeper than just labor. There are prison strikes going on who need our support. There are unhoused communities who should have a voice and what demands will empower them, and so on and so forth. So 3.5% of the population itself, and that same population, that those same contributors, whoever signed a strike card, should be putting back in, contributing, helping establish the infrastructure to sustain the strike. That's why it's important to build a broad coalition of every sector in the struggle, because General Strike U.S. cannot unfortunately do this alone. It's going to take the collective to liberate the collective.
How did you two get involved in this movement?
Dang.
Oh man. Shit, I gotta do this first. So I've
I,
been organizing in general strike stuff for a while. I was with different orgs trying to, because this, as an idea, a general strike, us working collectively as a populace to fight, fascism and fight capitalism seems to be a very logical solution. So I was actually working with another organization when I kind of came across General Strike U.S. and working to network and uh, gain connections with different groups, and that's kind of how I came across this idea of having a strike card along with having a minimum population set, and that was really kind of one of the thing that gave me there was a lot more structure to that general outline plan. I was like, that I was craving something like that as a thing to work under. So that way I wasn't just aimlessly hoping that one day a strike would happen. There's like a set thing that we know that we can, a goalpost we can move towards. And so that's why I switched over to General Strike US and been working with it ever since.
so General Strike started in 2022. I hopped on like early 2023. I found the link for the General Strike. I was already in another Discord called Moneyless Society. They are also one of our partner coalitions. So I'm already looking for, somewhere to let out my anger, direct my blind rage. I found the General Strike U.S. I just immediately got involved. One thing that I really liked, they got me with the phrase, we've marched, we voted, we protested for generations. And that is definitely true for so many communities. It would be illogical, for us to continue on the same route, doing the same things. I learned from revolutionaries like the Black Panther Party, and as Audre Lorde said, you cannot bring down a master's house with the master tools. So we have to think outside the box and outside the system in order to, liberate ourselves, truly liberate ourselves.
What is the organizational structure? Who tracks participation, or who says when the strike starts or stops?
One of the key factors is having the strike card. We have it on our website, but it's not simply just on our website. We actually have code that we can give to our partners, and they can put their own strike card on their own website. And the idea is they're going to be able to draw in people onto their website, onto their using their resources, and they can feedback that information to us, and we actually, tally up the total on all the websites using this code. So we're basically just using, the infrastructure of our day to sort of make this system where different groups that we work with can plug in how they want and do what they need to, so they can put a strike card on their website. They can they can just help with mutual aid efforts and organizing that way, right? And what the main tracker that helps identify this target is, we just, as a collective whole, the the center of this whole system that we all revolve around is this target number that we've all worked on and the general mission of radical change for all oppressed groups, right? And so we build out from that. And from there, all these different local groups, like me and Day work in the Detroit chapter for General Strike U.S. And so we do a lot of our work doing mutual aid, building the infrastructure in Detroit, right? And we provide feedback of how we're doing, and other groups can implement that if it works for them. Where they're out in California, could be of use or it could not. So they get to pick that up and drop it as they so choose. But the main driving factor that kind of dictates how this is all going is that tracker of the strike card. It gives us, because every single person within this organization, regardless of how entrenched they are, if they are a consistent, constant member, or if they're just planning to strike, or if they just want to provide mutual aid, they see that tracker go up. And when they see it hit 11 million people, they know, or once they see it approaching that and getting closer and closer, they know that it's getting close to the time to mobilize, right? So, and we'll be maintaining communication with everyone as well, right? So we're not going to just leave it up to the tracker. We also have communication systems applied, but everything's built in around that as the core of this organization. And we really describe the layout as a starfish. And so if you can think of it, the tracker is really the very dot center of that starfish body. General Strike National is the rest of the main body surrounding that, in which case we work on communicating with all the different arms, and then all those different arms are our local chapters that work within the communities, as well as our partners and their partners, and they're all connected out, reaching out and filling and taking care of all those jobs and all those tasks. But then it's all coming back to that communication systems that we're building up in the National General Strike organization, all built around that tracker.
So presumably there's representatives of all the various organizations, groups of people, however they're organized, that are part of General Strike National?
Yes.
Okay. And those folks, when you hit that number of strike cards or however you're tracking the amount of anticipated participation, those folks will then get together on whatever communication platform they use and say, "Okay, we're there. Now let's inform all of our groups that it's time." Is that
Yeah.
accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
So when somebody fills out that strike card, what is it they are communicating? Like literally, what are they agreeing to do? Saying they'll do, not obviously obligated, but what are they saying they'll do?
Commitment to solidarity and helping, build the infrastructure to sustain the strike, commitment to withhold their labor, consent to the establishment, their purchasing power. The strike card itself serves, many purposes. Progress tracking is a physical manifestation of our strength in numbers and diversity. For so long, many people feel like they are alone. But just looking at that number, I think it's like over 350,000 individuals. It's proof. The proof is there. Many people are dissenting. Many people are noticing the empire crumble. So it serves many purposes as well. So it's just
You
not a petition. It's not a change.com petition. When you sign a strike card, you should be actively redirecting your energy back into the community, back into the people, into the strike initiative.
when you say that they're preparing to withhold their labor,
Mhm.
that means quit job or go to your boss when the strike starts and say, "I'm taking a leave of an indefinite leave of absence to participate in a general strike." How what do you recommend if you have any?
So, and here's the trouble with this, right? We don't have all the answers for these particular tasks or for these
Sure.
particular questions. Right now, we are working to try and get help from specialists and everything like that to get to craft better tools so that way people can provide better answers, or I should say provide better response when they leave or withdraw their labor. But the primary thing that we would recommend for folks right now is working on their relationships within their, either if they're in a union or with just their colleagues, so that way you have connections within where you work, because that's going to matter a lot when you do withdraw your labor. If you have because you want to support network in your community, but it'll have a bigger impact on the company if you're going to like be able to have connections with folks. And when you talk and when you leave, those connections should inform how you leave. So we'll be able to provide some information to folks on, tools on how they can address their boss as well as their coworkers, because that should be important too. How you address the coworkers that you're no longer going to be working with for at least during the strike. We can provide tools to help you inform you on that, but those relationships should also be informing that. So like, talk with your coworkers, see about like how they're upset with, the system is oppressing them, and what's how that's manifesting in your job and how that's manifesting your workforce. And so that way you can keep a track of those things, because as we're building up, that'll be a good thing for you to keep in mind as you communicate when you leave your job.
Yeah, I would even add to that, like when we say people are striking, it starts in the mind. Revolution is the evolution of human consciousness. So just that descent, we're already striking. People, given their own capacity, their ability, they necessarily don't have to quit their jobs. They could just be contributing in a way, especially like if they care for, people, if they are a healthcare provider, they can actually, maintain that job, take their skills in the community, and possibly help out with the free clinic in their community. That way, still contributing to the strike. They should be able. We're not asking people to quit. We're asking people to do what's best for them. So if you're in a situation where you cannot strike financially, don't do so. Do not put yourself in that predicament. But we should all in that community be trying to build up these infrastructures to allow more people to participate in withholding their labor and their purchasing power and so forth and so on.
How can the people who are too poor to participate in the strike assist those folks? Growing food and donating it to a certain place?
Mm-hmm.
Offering up land if they have a big backyard?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Literally.
So
Okay.
this is really critical to like why the local chapters matter so much, right? Because there is no universal solution to how everything will work. The needs in certain communities are going to vary. I mean, we all need food, we all need housing, and we all need access to medical care, clean water. There's very clear basics, but also the structure of those communities are going to be very different. Here in Michigan, in Detroit, water is a lot more accessible than it is in, say, like, California for lots of times of the year. So
Yeah.
they're going to, they might have to put more emphasis in their organizing around that, right? So right now in our chapters, we are working on building that infrastructure so it already exists, so that way people are fed,
Hmm.
right? So good examples of that are our Feed the Fight um, event that we just had. We had a free store down at Riverside Park in Detroit, and we did that with the collective work of multiple organizations that partnered with us, and we're working to try and repeat that and build on it to make it bigger and more um, make it bigger so that way it can help more people. Similarly, we have partnerships with, as you mentioned, growing food, right? We have partnerships with food pantry or community kitchens. Either way, like the idea is one of the food pantry groups that we're working with, like we've helped them spend some man hours so that way we can help build up their food pantry and build in gardens next to it. And they even had an idea of us taking that same group of people that they've gotten and just organizing days to go to people who have yards and are willing to like lend out their yard to like use that labor force to just collectively reorganize their yard into a large garden and just supply that land. So yeah, there's many ways in which you can get involved, which is helping out with mutual aid with your labor. It's with providing food and resources, even clothing, which will be necessary. It can be even helping fight against evictions that'll happen to people as they try and resist their landlords kicking them out of the house. There's eviction fighting organizations that already exist here, and we want to partner with them and work with them to use their tactics to help keep people housed.
Strategic coalition building is important on a national level and local level. So we have to be strategic, connecting with groups and orgs already doing the work that can help with possible strike needs and strike demands. So it will be people from all classes, people from all walks of life coming together to put and build up this infrastructure. For example, we were just at the No Kings March. There was limited no poor people, but a lot of those people financially stable Democrats with the resources looking for something to do other than just protesting. So it's essential for us to meet the people, all people where they are, whether they are homeless or whether they are just some pissed off Democrats looking, to shift their energy into other things.
But it's in the distance. It's in the future. No matter what happens, it's going to take a while. And between right now, if you want to do something right now, and then sounds like folks should be hoarding as much of their resources, like land, food, and money, in preparation, saving up for this winter that we would enter. Does that sound accurate?
It should be for a general strike or whatever comes our way.
Okay.
Communities need to be proactive. Natural disaster, martial law, war, anything that comes our way. We've been too docile. We've been too static,
Yeah.
depending on the state. So the general strike also, we put political education emphasis on everything. We also offer those classes, discussions on Wednesday. But we should be learning, building up our class consciousness that if we want true power, if we want to step into our collective power, we have to take that responsibility no matter what. So it's just not preparation for a general strike, it's preparation for whatever comes our way. And we take care of us, and no one is coming to save us.
I'd like to add on that because there's a word that you used, and it made me think about a real differentiation, how we're trying to change the dynamic of things, right? Because you mentioned hoarding those resources, right? But that's really not what we're doing. I mean, like to some degree, like, there's this idea of being a prepper, right? And that idea is usually you have like 10,000 cans of beans in your house, right? And you use that to hoard as much food and ammunition and everything like that, so that way you're prepared. But the thing is that, like, you can't prepare enough on your own.
Hmm.
It's not about hoarding, because that's what the billionaires do. They hoard everything. We're doing the opposite. We're sharing. We're doing it with our community. It's about maximizing our resources, not by hoarding them, but by getting our community members involved and making sure we can do as much with them as possible. So yeah,
Sure.
you got land. That's good, but it's making sure you just have land is not going to do much if you don't have a bunch of people willing to come and help you, make sure that you can have it a nice food garden that's established and ready to feed people.
But to be clear, for those who are interested in this movement and want to be ready for it, you would recommend s-
Yeah, I
saving a
mean,
supply of food, saving
saving
money.
supplies and working, but saving supplies, yes, definitely. The main thing is just the idea should be is that you should be connecting with local community groups, so that way you're doing it on a larger scale than just yourself,
Mm.
because you can have a much larger impact that way. So yes, save resources that will be of use, but don't just think about this in a isolated individualistic mentality of I have to
Sure.
save all my cans of beans. It's my community needs enough to prosper, right? That's the big difference.
You also mentioned withholding commerce. I find that very interesting. So this won't just be something that affects people who are trying to use the industry that is currently striking. But hopefully, my understanding is that the 3.5% is also 3.5% of America's domestic customers for things. How does withholding your commerce at a specific time, like when the strike is on, help?
We see it with the boycotts. The General Strike U.S. We support, smaller boycotts, strikes and whatnot. But we see in recent, events, the people who have been boycotting McDonald's and Target, and we see the decline. We know the power of our dollar. We know that our taxes are being used, to cause atrocities around the globe. So a lot of groups have been talking about divesting and investing back into community, divesting from the military, divesting from a lot of things that don't particularly empower us. So it's important that we, along with withholding our labor, that we withhold that purchasing power. Also, is for many reasons. Some of the products that we may be purchasing may not be ethically produced, like our phones, for instance. We understand that our technology is being basically produced by slave labor when it comes, to the legal mining in Congo and things of that nature. We understand that Amazon, the overproduction at Amazon, is destroying the earth. We have items destroying, sitting around and rotting in landfills. So just being conscious more as a consumer, switching from a consumer to creators, and it's allowing the people to actually get back into the community and create skill sharing. We can build together. It's also helping raising up that class consciousness as well. So it's many ways that we can resist. We see the boycotts, we see strikes, the protests, the sit-ins. All of these ingredients can go back into this strike initiative. That's what it will take. Yeah, please sign
So
up,
we have
check out the website, the link
Yeah.
tree, and just look at some of the resources provided, and it will help you understand and grasp the concept of this general strike movement a lot more.
So that's individuals. That's what the individual effort can be. Go to the website, sign up, go sign your strike card, start saving resources that you may need to live on in order to not participate in this capitalist society for a time. But you, if I understand correctly, are also attempting to reach out to whole industries, such as the auto industry, such as airlines, attempting to get their unions to agree to the general strike. I understand why you would want that, because that's a lot of folks all at once shutting down something major. But why should somebody who is a member of a union or an industry care about the economic well-being of somebody outside their industry, apart from having a soul?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, the number one answer that comes in my head is solidarity, which I think is kind of what you were just getting at, is like it's what we should do. But I think there's a lot of folks that that's just not going to be enough for, right? And so, one of the main things is that like it's really the main thing, the main message I would bring across is, well, this is what's going to work, right? I
Mm,
mean, the idea is that if we have fallen so far behind so much of the world, as well as just capitalism has taken has indoctrinated itself so deeply, embedded itself so deeply in our culture, that it's there's a lot to undo. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it's not going to just simply be your one little labor issue that you have, or your better pay increase. If we don't unroot all these core issues that have deep into the soil of this country, like if we don't unroot them and start anew and fresh, then they're just going to come back,
mm,
almost like a weed that's in your yard that you just can't get rid of, right? If you just try and pull it day by day by yourself, it's not going to happen. You need to work together with your community to make it happen. And so if we have, and one of the main reasons that we're going to be able to get 3.5% of the population is because that this is going to be a movement that's going to have different things that help other people at differing levels. Some people will be joining this because it has we are going to work on climate change, and that's one of our promises. That's part of one of our demands, right? And there'll be people who will be a part of this because they want better protection for unions. And those are both good on their own. But you also, if you don't come together and work together, then you don't have a large enough force to really make change happen. And that's where our saying that we first came up with, which is we've been marching, we've been voting, we've been protesting, and it hasn't been doing anything. And all these individual groups have been beating against the wall constantly for decades, only to consistently often lose ground, um
mm,
or get marginal victories. And we're saying, all right, well, let's team up and get everybody a big win, because we'll be able to have enough power collectively as a unified radical, like unified group, to really make radical change in this country.
If somebody sells cars for a living, could it be argued that the populace in general having more money, like say by raising the federal minimum wage, means more customers, means more cars bought, more vacations taken via the airlines, whatever industry you're talking about. Do you foresee this having that kind of an economic impact?
You know, so I think that there is a practicality of it, of us working together, right? And that's the big aspect of it, right? Is that, like, because we'll be unified and working together, because it's a larger, this has been a thing that's routinely been seen throughout history, is that there's a large umbrella and it's supposed to bring a large group together. And that has good value in bringing in numbers and stuff like that, but there's a main thing that we have to make sure is we keep unity, and that unity has to be built around solidarity. And the main area which we're working on building that is in community,
Mm,
because as much as we'll initially be able to get people to join in because it's mutually beneficial, people stay stronger with the people who are they have strong connections with. And
mm.
so we can't just simply make an appeal to people's hearts, and it's the right thing. We can't simply make an appeal to this being the more rational decision, that when we fight together we'll get a bigger, um that'll draw people in. But we have to then, once we draw people in, the bigger fight is within our local communities, within our local chapters, connecting everyone. So that way,
Mm.
that union guy, because like what I saw on May Day earlier this year is we've gotten new more union effort into local organizing than we've ever had before. And I'm seeing union guys who are marching along and chanting for for a free Palestine, or they are chanting for
Heck yeah.
women's rights when they probably never would have. A guy never would have, and they're hearing about these cases of things that they never would have cared about, because they're getting to see the faces of the people who it affects. They get
Yeah.
to see how it is inside their community, and that's what's critical, because they need to know that it's not just like some weird blue-haired person on the internet. It's their neighbor.
Which industries are crucial to get on board?
We say all of them, from transportation. There's many, of course, different reasons that we would, want to connect with all of these workers, but we can start in that health industry. The health industry definitely is important, because they do, take care of people. They are essential. Like if we would like to start like a free clinic or anything, they have skills that can go towards that infrastructure. People in education, they are with our youth. They are able to organize and politicize our youth as well. And in the past, they've had plenty of strikes themselves. We can say transportation and logistics. We have truckers, our railroad workers. Many of these people, they move the economy. They move our food. They move our fuel, our medicine, and things of that nature. It will be, hypothetically, a tight situation for the capitalists if that was to be put on hold.
Yeah.
Earlier, we talked about domestic and informal labor, the sex workers, our immigrant community, undocumented workers, women who are work in the homes. All of these things can shut down, and prevent us from carrying business as usual. We said industrial workers, food services, tech, media. Tech is very important. Media is very important because they can help help us digitally organize. They can help us put a different narrative out there for the people, by the people. All of these are crucial to this general strike. I'll leave it at that.
How does the amount of participation affect the length of the strike?
Yeah, that's something that is there's no real definitive answer. There's a lot of different scenarios and different variables that really impact that. We could have, you know, leading data analysts from across the country, try and answer that question, they'd probably come up with slightly different answers because it would depend on, if we have 3.5% of the population, right? Well, it's going to depend on the rich people and how stubborn they are. But it's
No,
also going to really
which
depend.
people with a
Oh,
WH.
rich people. Yeah, exactly. Like, if we have the entirety of the railway, and then the entirety of all traffic, like our truck drivers, as Dave
That's
was
like a
mentioning, I mean,
10-day
like
strike then. That's
that's done. We go home like checkmate, right? Can we get all of that? That's hard. So, it'll also depend on the factors outside of just the general strike, because obviously people are going to organize, protests. People are going to
Mm.
organize actions and things like that. And what impact do those have? And how much pressure does that apply on the billionaire class, right? So what I would really say is that, like, it would, if we can get enough. And another factor too, I'm going to say in this, is that the 3.5 is when we start. The idea would be that we're not going to stop recruiting when we start the general strike. We are going to try and leverage the action that happens and try and use that to push for more people to join on. When people can see that it's actually making an impact on things, and then it might cause some pressure to the billionaires that have been ruining people's lives, they might finally, that might be the final lever to get some people to join in and help us. So
Yeah.
really trying to build on that momentum is probably one of the most critical things. Who we have striking is another critical issue. So the main thing I would tell people who are actually listening to this and want to know, like, how long it was, the assumption should be, because when you're trying to prepare and get what you can for your community, the assumption should be it's going to be long. We have to be able to hold out for an extended period. We will try and find as many of those factors, like getting, key industries shut down, so that way it can be faster. But we have to be planning for something that's not going to be a short strike. I wouldn't expect us to be done in 2 weeks or anything like that. That's
Mm.
not going to be the reality of this.
So if you don't clarify what your specific asks are now, and there's certainly wisdom in that, but if you get to that, if you wait all the way until the 3.5%
Hmm.
before you clarify that, do you not run the risk of a bunch of people saying, wait a minute, that's not why I signed my strike card. I was imagining something different.
We have
If so, what do
a
you do?
broad list of strike demands on our welcome packet. We also have, strategy team. We meet every so often, and we, try to work through which demands will still have to work in this current system, which demands that we can actually work towards, like food sovereignty. The people, we can have more food cooperatives, more solidarity houses, and so on and so forth. We've also started condensing our broad list of strike demands into our own 10-point platform. So if you are familiar with the Black Panther Party, they had a 10-point platform. We've come up with our own 10-point platform, and it basically discusses our broad list, but a strategic way, practical steps that we can take. Bread, housing, a dignified life, community safety, communal ownership of resources, things of that nature, that language as well. So there is conversations and discussions being on strike demands before we reach that 6 million. I would encourage people, if you do get a hold of our of our welcome packet, check out slide 8. You'll see our broad list of strike demands. You'll also be able to, it's a document attached. It's called GSUS Strike Demands Expanded. All of that information is there. You'll see our 10-point platform, the condensed version of our broad list of strike demands, practical steps that we've been talking about, transitional steps that we can take collectively, and hold the current administration accountable in order to obtain and achieve.
A big factor too, and this is all in, our welcome packet describes this. This is our general plan, is that we have like set steps. So there is, like, we have a general list of demands. It's generic, but those specifics, we have a point at which before we hit 3.5, where, it's set in that we're going to be working towards those more specified portions of it, right? So, and again, I mentioned this before, is that, like, we want feedback from the people who are joining in the organization. We're going to be reaching for that information from people, because when you sign the strike card, you can get involved in organizing with us. You can, discuss with all the people here and talk about how we can make this happen. So that way we can get as big of a consensus as possible. So we know people are actually not just, tacitly signing on to a general idea of climate change, but when we start working through that, we'll have conversations with the people involved and they'll see that conversation unfolding. It'll be open. It won't be hidden behind doors like a lot of the things that happen with our governments today. We'll be openly talking with people about it and engaging and getting their information and their feedback.
There's even
You
a
got it.
section on the website. It's a tab called demands where people can go on a website and put what demands they feel will empower their community the best. So I'll check that out as well.
Yeah, it does seem to me like this has value even if you never reach the point of the general strike. The closer you get to it, the more it's going to scare the hell out of politicians and the more they're going to be looking to release the pressure and get less people to sign up for your thing so they want to eliminate those problems. It seems you could even get some unions to sign on if you said something along the lines of, we're not starting unless we get this many participants and these 3 unions, knowing damn well that you're never going to get the third. But if you get the first 2, it scares the politicians. I'm being very specific in these examples, but my point is there's value in just the threat of a general strike.
The idea is to achieve major revolutionary change. That's the
Mm,
goal. If that gets done without a single person having to strike, that's better.
yeah.
If we can amass such a threat that we somehow get the government and the billionaires that back them to back down, that would be an amazing accomplishment. That threat, I would doubt that that's going to happen, but there is power in that threat. There
Mm,
is use in that, and that's been discussed in our strategies. I mean, like similar to what you're saying, right? As we're building up, there could be, elections or even different, bills that are getting passed. And once we start building a following, we can start pressuring senators and congressmen. We can start telling them that this is important to this people and they're willing to strike to make sure it happens. Are you sure you want to be on the opposite side of that? That threat can be implied as we build up for sure. And I think really the bigger part about that, as we build towards this, as we grow collectively, is that something that's been really missing in the U.S. for a long time is that threat, not just of like the strike, but of just collective organizing to a large degree. Because as
yes.
we build in our communities, we're going to strengthen the resilience in those communities, and they're going to be able to protest and fight back more and more and more consistently and harder. And that's going to be hopefully unrelenting.
I would add as well what we're doing now. Even if we don't, go through with the strike, the infrastructure, the dual power, the alternative structures that
Yeah.
we are organizing, it will help the next generation advance the struggle. What we're doing now, we may not be able to, reap the benefits, but maybe that is all we're supposed to do. Maybe we're supposed to get this collective tool, the general strike, to that level while educating our youth, while passing on the information, and they will take it even further than we did. And we're hoping so. Maybe our youth will be in a intentional revolutionary commune where they are practicing these ideas and practices, and they will be strong enough to take on the enemy.
Can this be scaled down? Can you teach these principles to groups and say have GSLA say 5% of us are not going into our jobs until ICE is out of here, not harassing us, until the Marines are out of here and not harassing us?
Yes, people are already, especially in LA. It's funny that you did say LA, but it's very hot. But after all of that happened, LA is one of our first chapters to get their own strike fund. So I'm pretty sure they should be moving into some type of action. They have their own strike fund through Open Collective, peer-to-peer fundraising, which is good. And we do support them. And if they are, going to go forward with it, they will have our support, and it may cause a ripple effect, but I'm pretty sure we'll keep pushing for a mass general strike for each 50 states.
I had no idea they were doing this in response to abuse of power in LA.
Hmm.
Is that just what's that called? General Strike LA? Where do I throw money at this
Uh,
fund?
General Strike Los Angeles. They're on Instagram. I can give you their information if you can't find them after. But yes, they are actively organizing for that strike fund, and it was definitely a hiking, and they're organizing a spike after those LA raids. But the material conditions, these things are not linear, and we were, instead of being reactive, we are proactive. So they are
Mm,
already starting to gear up.
You know, honestly, there's the biggest thing I have to say is that this is the general strike is the centerpiece around which this is working around, but you the idea is simply to resist fascism, resist capitalism, and bring about radical change to that's centered around human beings and are the lives
mm,
that we have. So any so just the even if you don't want to necessarily work directly with this, anything that you can do to build resistance to capitalism and resistance to fascism in your community is good work, and please do it. And it doesn't matter if you're an artist, it doesn't matter if you're an accountant, or it doesn't matter if you don't feel like you have any particular skills at all. We need people to just actively come and do the work, and there'll be people who have ideas and there'll be people who just need to do work. That's fine. There's plenty of jobs for you. The only thing I would say that's the biggest thing is come with us. We've got a mission, we've got a goal, and we'd love to have you. If you want to find work somewhere else, work within your community and build that
mm.
resistance.